I think we will just crack on this morning. So welcome everybody and thank you for joining us today. This is the latest in our Breakfast and Brainfood event series. And I think, as a lot of you that have joined know, I'm Katie Spreadbury, Managing Director of Vested. We're a specialist financial services agency, and audiences are very definitely always front of mind for us, and a little bit of a passion and a talking point. So this is really why we've put this event together today. And the focus this morning is going to be on how we bring the human element to B2B marketing and communications, and particularly looking at the financial services sector. And there's sort of a movement of using this label B2H, business to human. So we're going to really unpick, we've had B2B, we've had B2C, we've had B2B2C, all of these acronyms, and we're going to really be pushing in the conversation to look at this new one this morning. I hope actually that most of you who gave your addresses have got some goodies and things to get you through the session this morning, if you didn't eat them all over the weekend, because mine arrived on Friday. I hope you enjoy those, and really now just want to move on to welcome our panel, who have very kindly agreed to give us their time and share their expertise this morning. We're going to do a quick round of introductions and then really jump into the main conversation. So Lara, would you mind introducing yourself first this morning?
Sure. Hi everyone, I'm Lara Paling. I'm the Marketing Director for Canada Life in the UK. Just a little bit about me, Katie, for everyone.
Yeah, go for it.
So I'm a thoroughbred FS marketing leader. I'm a scientist and linguist by education and an accountant by qualification, but I've got a huge passion for people. And I found and fell in love with marketing about 20 years ago when I discovered it's the secret to having a job that I love, which is basically allows me to be curious, be focused on the customer and customer needs, and combines science and creativity.
Perfect, thank you. And Dom?
Hello, I'm Dominic Paling. I'm an independent strategist. I've been working in the marketing industry for about 25 years for several different global agencies, working across corporate, consumer, healthcare, and employee audiences. So kind of as a strategist stroke planner, my job has been to understand audiences and their needs and their changing desires, wants and behaviors, etc. And I think there's not a continent other than the Antarctic that I haven't done a piece of research into human behavior on. My claim to fame, my only claim to fame, is I worked on the Like a Girl Can Line winning award, which I'm deeply proud of. And that's kind of me.
Lovely. And Simon?
Morning, everyone. I'm Simon Moore. I'm a psychologist, and I run a psychology agency that helps brands and organizations understand audiences. So whether that's employees or customers or clients, makes no difference to us. It's a human. And my job is to kind of lift the rocks and stones up and find out really what's going on. Because as we're probably going to get into, what people say they're going to do is not what they do. So let's crack on then, I suppose, Katie.
Yeah, and obviously my job this morning is to try and make sure we all get a lot from this conversation, and Lara, Simon and Dom all have a lot to say. So we've all talked about my job in trying to sort of keep us all to time. But just to let you all know, my aim is that we try and finish the main bulk of the conversation about 9:10. So there's a bit of time for questions, and that everybody gets the 10 minutes before whatever you have going on at 9:30 this morning as well. Please do use the chat functionality to submit any questions. Very happy to have questions throughout the conversation, but we will save a bit of time for them at the end as well. So to get us started on the topic this morning, what we're going to do is a very sort of a short answer question. So Simon, I'm going to come to you first. In a couple of sentences, can you just talk to me about what having a B2H approach means to you? And I know there's some debate around the term B2H, so we can go there.
Yeah, I'll try and be succinct. So for me, we've done a lot of the what and a lot of the who, and you probably got that coming out of your ears. And I keep getting told I've got more questions now than answers than I've ever had as a business. And it's, it's getting the why. The why is the new thing. And I think that's the thing that's crucial to everyone. But the trouble is that humans are terrible at articulating and understanding what makes their decisions. I mean, they think we're we do as well. Everyone here probably thinks they're much more in control of themselves than they actually are. And so what we do know is that the non-conscious is really, really vital here. We need to bring that into the arena. So for me, it's the kind of understanding the why, I think, is the next kind of part of the journey for many organizations.
Great, thank you. And Dom?
I think it's technology for me, the human piece. I mean, we've always been communicating with humans throughout all of our careers. I mean, we're all human, aren't we? And even regulators are human, even procurement staff are human. It's possible to have relationships with all of these people and touch them. But I think the technology piece for me is where everything has changed. I think it's so easy to copy anything these days, and innovation is so expensive these days that there's very little difference in anything produced by anybody. So if you don't wrap it in a human wrapper, you don't offer it to people in a human way, whatever the products or services, then people can't relate to it, can't differentiate it, can't choose it. So I think you've got to wrap something in a human way. I think you've got to empower your staff to behave, enable them to actually deliver that. So you have to treat them as humans too. So we have to look inwards into our business and to treat our own employees as humans and treat them with respect. And I think we also have to be looking outside of our own businesses and thinking about the world around us and humanity in general, and treating them properly as humans too, and as we should all be treating each other. And when we do that, we can kind of communicate better and more effectively to the world. So business to humans for me is wrapping it in a human wrapper, delivering it by humans, making sure that the humans in the world around you are protected and have a good world to live in too.
Great. And Lara?
Thank you. I guess not wanting to risk repeating everything. I agree with everything Simon and Dom had said. I guess specifically in financial services, when we're talking to businesses, it's about recognizing that it's still a human that makes the decision at the end of the day. So it's not the business or the process that actually makes the decision. And therefore, it's a good dose of all the features and rational sides. But even more importantly, it's about connecting to the emotion, making people care, making us relevant.
Yeah. Great. And Dom, I'm going to come back to you with the next question, because you started to talking about this wrapping it in human piece. And I thought what we could start exploring this morning is actually, how do we bring the human values to the front of business? How do we make sure that they come really to the fore? And how does that then tie to business success? And you've talked about the internal, the external. So just talk to us a little bit about how we bring it to the front.
I think that if you think about sort of 1950s stylized TV advertising and the kind of the idealized world depicted, you see the sort of woman in the kitchen cleaning the plates and so forth and leading a kind of a perfect life. I mean, that kind of world is nonsense, isn't it? And within those people there was a kind of seething mass of rebellion and desire for change that we then kind of saw in the 60s and 70s and 80s, and that kind of desire for humanity to kind of come out. So if you want to tap into that, you've got to understand that people's lives aren't linear, that they're bumpy, that they are that changes happen to them constantly, that things are good for them, things are bad for them, all of those kind of qualities. People lead real lives, and we don't all lead the same lives. So we've got to be treated as individuals. We need businesses not to contribute to the kind of trials and tribulations of our lives. They actually got to help us and bring some certainty into our lives, and bring some consistency into our lives. They should be providing us with services that are individualized to our needs, so that we can turn them on and off. And I think actually, arguably, what they should be doing most is bringing some kind of quality of control into our lives, where other things in our lives are not there, allowing us to control things around us. And in the FS space, I've been looking from a personal perspective at personal indemnity insurance, and I've been astonished by the number of kind of very smart platforms and new technologies that allow me to operate as an independent provider of strategy, and still tap into personal indemnity insurance that can turn on at very low cost. So my life has become bumpy. They have interacted with me in a way that's giving me much more control in my life, and makes me feel, gives me the ability to be more human. They treat me like a human. It's a great way of selling me a product and keeping me loyal. So I think it's about offering people a sense of control, and helping them avoid the bumps in the road that their normal lives throw up.
I think you make interesting points, Dom, because we can all self-reference on the good and the bad experiences, can't we? And we've definitely all had both sides of that coin. Lara, what are your thoughts on how the human values should come to the fore?
It's a really good question, Katie. I'm just agreeing with everything that Dom and Simon say, which I'm bound to, aren't I? But I think on a practical level, it's about getting boardroom buy-in for me. So from the top, it's about making sure that the organisation takes a customer-centric approach and understands what that really means. You need a really strong strategic capability, which is about blending data and research and insight, and definitely needs a sprinkling of intuition, because that brings you to sort of knowing your customers and who they are, but really importantly, as we've said at the top of the call, like sort of what motivates them, and only then can you really start connecting with them on that individual level that Dom's spoken to. But also making you relevant. So, and that way we can create difference. So we've spoken an awful lot previously in marketing about, differentiating yourselves from the competition, which you need to do, but sometimes it's much more about creating that difference and making people care. So the one thing I'm really passionate about is empathy, and showing empathy in your marketing, showing you're on someone's side, making it individual to them, recognizing that you understand them, because that's the one thing that sort of technology and AI can't actually replicate. So I'd really focus on that empathy as well.
Yeah, Simon, coming to you next. I know empathy and tension are definitely things you spend time talking about.
Lara said, actually, this is always half frustrates me and half makes me fall off the chair when I learn how much money organizations spend on media, and then you ask them how much they spend on the research and the insight stuff, and some of them look at you and go, what's that? And then if some of the more advanced might say, if they're lucky, 10%. And for me, it's like, well, hang on a minute, isn't the tail wagging the dog here? Because if you don't know the why, then how do you know you're creating the relevant media outputs? Isn't it a little bit of a shotgun, kind of like, I'll just spend loads of money and hope something sticks? And I think that is probably what happens still. I'm seeing it change, thankfully, a little bit more thought going into it. And I would kind of be encouraged by kind of Lara's suggestion that you're doing it slightly differently, which is always nice to hear. And I think more companies need to think a little bit more carefully. I mean, even if they took a little bit of the budget, I mean, not saying, change the whole media spend, but if you took a little fraction of that, you would actually see that your media spend would be much more impactful, probably. And you probably would have to spend less of it as well to be more impactful. But anyway, so for me, it's all about the why. And so it's the need. So to your point, Katie, it's understanding these sort of more deep-seated, and Dom mentioned it a little bit. So we can actually divide humanity into 4 kind of need groups, which is nice and neat, isn't it? And they work from a prediction point of view about what people do next in terms of making decisions. They work much better than attitudes and personality. So if I know, for example, that you have a computer screen that's surrounded by Post-it notes, and you have a clock within your vision, and you have a watch on, and you have a diary, and all the kids are in after school clubs, then you're probably someone who's a bit of a planner and needs control, doesn't like risk. I now know how to kind of talk to you. So as an FS brand, what I shouldn't be saying to you is, I'm a great brand and I can take control of your finances and I'm smart, because the planner will go, no. To Dom's point, they will go, no, I want to be the smart person. I want to be in control. Actually, won't come with you. I'll go with another brand that kind of gives me that or fulfills that need for me. And the problem is that audiences are oscillating between a number of things. So all of us on this call, partly we're trying to avoid being someone like we're considered. So you're kind of moving away from what we call this avoidant self. Who do I not want to be seen to be like? And then part of us is also moving towards what we call the ideal self. Who would I rather be seen more like? And that's the same with your audiences, your customers, your employees. They're a moving audience. And to Dom's point, they're not static. And I think that's one of the big myths that we can like lock it down. I've got 16 personas. That's who they are. And I've got all these cardboard cutouts in my kind of boardroom of these 16 personas. I can go in there and work out who they are. No, you won't, because that cardboard cutout of Mary is changed. Because what is she? Is she the ideal self at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, or is she the avoidant self? Don't know. If you don't know, that data is useless to you. So that's one issue that I kind of feel that brands should be thinking about. How are the audits? They're dynamic. They shift around. And the other thing is, one nice thing about humans is they fall into two camps. What can I gain, or what do I maintain? And if you think about that about your audience, that's a clue about how you can actually engage with them. Are they about gaining something from you? So are you going to meet their needs? And I'm not talking about a product or a service. I'm talking, are they going to gain status? Are they going to gain social inclusion? Are they going to gain sort of feeling more smart? Or interacting with you, is that going to take something away from them? What might they lose? Would they lose time? Would they lose space? So perhaps we have to sort of think about things in a different way, because we need to augment the sort of static data stuff about how old they are, where do they live, what do they buy, how often do they buy it. That's useful, but that doesn't tell you why.
Thank you, Simon. I think it's interesting because what you're talking about is really deeply understanding the people that you're trying to reach and on a different level. And for me, that is balanced out by actually the business that's trying to reach those people being authentic. So we're trying to find the authentic sense of who our customers really are and what they need, but we have to be authentic to meet them in that place and to be able to connect with them. I would quite like us to explore this authenticity piece a little bit. And Dom, I'll come to you first on this one, if it's okay. What are your thoughts on this?
I kind of feel it's super simple, but super hard. And for me, it's about control. So not in the sense of as Simon was saying, people want different things. Some people want to be in control. Some people want their lives controlled, whatever. People have different needs. And Simon is obviously quite right. When we understand people, we can give them what they want better. But the super simple answer is actually, if a business can cede more control, it shifts its control to the person. So as soon as they offer the other person control, they can pull the service through whenever they want, they can access it whenever they want, they can have variants of it whenever they want. I think that gives a degree of authenticity to the kind of human offer, because essentially what it's saying is, you person can have what you want from us within the construct that we are offering you. So the more I can actually give power to the consumer to pull whatever the product or service is through to me, the more they feel in control of that experience, the more they feel that, the more human and the more normal the relationship between us. And so it's not just some great big entity and a little person, it is a sort of a parity, I guess, between the two parties. And the greater the parity you can create between the organization and the individual, the greater the sense of control and the greater sense of humanity in that setting. And I think that is obviously the enormous ability of the new platforms, the new startups. They can have, they can tap into all of those new technologies that kind of deliver that experience. So weirdly, the more virtual it's becoming, the more human it can seem. The use of chatbots, the use of all of those sorts of human interactions and touch points are becoming more and more effective in making people feel comfortable with the service of a certain type. My mum, who's 80, doesn't like a chatbot. I'm not sure I like a chatbot very much either, but a lot of people do. And actually what people want more than anything else is an answer quite quickly. And if that's what a chatbot gives them, then so be it. But it's about ceding control.
Great. Thank you, Lara. Any thoughts on authenticity from you?
Yeah, So as well as control, I think, in financial services, people need to trust us because we have their money, and they need to think we're going to be there for the long term and that we're looking after that money, or we're looking after their loved ones if they're not here. And if you kind of decode and unpick trust a little bit, I think there's a huge amount of creating the right promises and then delivering to those promises, and that's how you build the trust over time. So absolutely, it's about giving people control, but it's about how, when you understand people's whys and the needs that you're answering, you commit to those promises. And as communications experts, sometimes it's very easy just to kind of talk about the why, but actually it's about what are those promises that you're making, and then it's teaming up with the customer services team and the distribution teams to making sure that you are living those promises outside in and inside out, so that you're not breaking any part of it. Your demonstration, not tell, and I think that's a huge part of the authenticity, that people experience your promises and they continually, consistently experience those promises. And on a more practical level, I absolutely agree. It's about technology, and it's also about choice. So I think exactly right. As an individual, there's times when I just want to speak to a human, and I want to know that human is there, understands me. There's other times when I just want it in the moment, and it's quite a simple answer, and an AI or a chatbot can do that for me. So I would just add the word choice.
If I can just bail back in there quickly, I couldn't agree with Laura more about the kind of the do not tell thing. If you think about the situation in the world at the moment, all of the, from a kind of an ESG perspective, all of the large corporates have sort of started to say that they'll do things better. Well, they're now entering a phase where they're actually going to have to do stuff. And they need to be seen to be doing stuff. And actually that is a complicated thing, because I think it's actually quite hard to demonstrate that you are doing the right thing. So I think that whole period of authenticity, we've entered an interesting phase of authenticity in this space, because I think it's actually quite difficult for people to demonstrate the good that they're doing. So, but they need to do it, because otherwise people won't believe them. Sorry, Simon, I kind of cut across you.
No, fine. Let me kind of like sit and kind of like listen.
Simon, your turn now, I reckon. Off you go.
So a funny thing for me, I'll take this in a slightly different direction. So I'll try and add to what sort of Dom and Laura have said. So for me, I think brands have to be a little bit more transparent. So the human brain is wired to think about stress and negative points of threat. But what do brands do? They sit down and they tell us how good they are. So look, let's give you an analogy. You're going on a blind date. You turn up at the restaurant. Thankfully, your blind date turns up. That's one tick. You can relieve yourself a little bit. They sit down and then they start talking about themselves for about 20 minutes, how great they are. They've done all this. They're going to do all this, all their achievements. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm already thinking there's no way I'm going to go on a second date with this person, because it's like they haven't even let me talk. I haven't had any input here. They're just telling me, they're bombarding me with how great they are. I've got some concerns about them, as I would normally when I meet someone new, but they're not letting me voice those concerns, or I can't find out if those concerns are genuine or not. So, and this is, I think, what brands do often. They say how great they are. They're really nervous about talking about the negatives. And I don't know about you, but my friends who tell me I've got these bad things about me, but now you know about them and now you're aware, you go, oh, that's really honest about you. I kind of like that. So I think brands can rethink things sometimes by going, we understand you have some concerns, recognize the negative. I know brands don't like talking about the negative, but from a psychology point of view, they should, because it actually gets trust and it is transparent. But they should have an answer to those negatives. So if there are like 3 or 4 issues that the consumers could have with them, for example, voice those concerns to say you've thought about them. Well, aren't you smart? Oh, well, you talk in my language. How smart of you to know of the questions I was going to ask you, and give them the answers and say why they shouldn't be concerned for those things, and then move into the how great you are. Don't lead on the how great you are, because it just makes me more nervous, because it's like, whoa, hang on a minute. The fact that you're saying how great you are is kind of like making me feel a little bit uncomfortable, because I don't really know you, but you're telling me how great you are. I don't even know that. So that's one thing for me. I would pause a little bit on the technology, because human brains are designed to interact with other people. And we don't like tech, and our brain is definitely not designed to interact with tech. Okay, there's about a 20% part of your brain that likes numbers and science and digital and technology. 80% of it does not like it. It likes the, what do I feel about this? And so the tech takes that away sometimes. It can be quite a kind of a sort of black and white experience, with the kind of takes the emotions out. So why tech would be useful, we have to be a little bit careful with it. So for example, worked with a bank, all their customers were saying to the bank, we don't trust you because you're a bank. And so the bank was like, fair enough. I'd imagine that's a sector problem. Let's throw more technology at you guys to show that we're investing in tech to help you out to manage your money. The wrong thing to do. They lost 8% of their market share, because, to my first point, if you don't ask the why are they saying that to you, you're making assumptions. So the assumption was, you're telling me the truth, you don't trust us. Actually, with a little bit of research, what we showed them is, no, they trust you intuitively. Actually, most people don't trust their own financial ability. But it's embarrassing to tell you that, so I'll deflect it onto you. So actually, by throwing even more tech at me, you're making me even more underconfident in my ability. I now feel even more out of my depth with you. I'm going to go somewhere else, because you may be even more nervous now, and even I feel even more incompetent. So actually, we have to be really careful with the tech. And it's back to this original problem. If you don't know the why of what's going on, throwing stuff randomly at people and just copying everyone like they're doing new tech, let's us do new tech, could be the worst thing that you could possibly do with your audience. So you have to get to know them first. And that's what creates that authentic experience, I guess.
I love Simon, your point at the beginning about the date night, because you just made the best supporting claim for PR, for vested there, which is the kind of the classic line, isn't it? It's the oldest line in the book about PR, which is advertising tells you how great a lover you are, and that's never very good. But PR, it relies on somebody else to say they're a great lover, and that is the best testimony. So influencers and third-party endorsements, super powerful for authenticity, super powerful for those things. I'm not sure about the kind of admitting to your failures type stuff. I mean, I don't know how you do it. I mean, if you can help me understand that better, how can we be better at saying that we are not so good? Fessing up to things.
You can do it. We've done it a lot with insurance and banks and pharma. I mean, pharma are a really risk-adverse kind of sector.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Done it with them and shown them that consultants will actually engage with more of their products if you're slightly more honest about what their issues might be to start with, as long as you can tell them why they don't need to worry about it. You're never gonna talk about your own product, are you? You're never gonna say, on the one hand it's good, but on the other hand it's not. But you can say, you might be concerned about this, we understand that, and this is how we're solving that. You don't have to talk about the product. It's about their feeling and their needs. That's how you get around.
It's a kind of classic sales technique then, isn't it?
And it works because people feel like, oh, okay, I had those questions and you're answering to them. How? Well, great. You're the first brand that's done that with me. Everyone else has told me how great I am. And you're like, well, yeah, but they're saying that as well. So how do I know? You're saying you're great and they're saying they're great, but I still got these worries and concerns. No one's told me how I should stop worrying about those.
Yeah.
I also think what you're both talking to is, I mentioned, it's a blend of data and research and intuition, because we've all spent money on research and thought, does that teach us anything new? And then how people act, they're not actually lying in the research. It's how they, to your point, Simon, it's how they feel at the time, or it's what they feel they should be saying. And there's a whole bunch of the psychology that comes out through the research. So for me, it really is making sure that you try and join up your data, your research, and that intuition that I spoke about to try and answer the why and dig into those a lot deeper than we have done previously.
And I think to that point, Lara, that we have to think slightly differently about the methods we do with the research, because a lot of the stuff we do in terms of research is based on post-rationalized responding. What will you do? What do you think? Well, we've already demonstrated that people are not very good at understanding what drives them. So you're going to need much more sophisticated methods to unleash that stuff behind the scenes that people are not aware what's driving their decisions. And it's there. There are tools and technology that can do it. We use some. it's out there, but people are not aware where they get it. And I think one of the other problems I have, another bugbear for me, is these agencies who say they can do psychology and behavioral science. And if you look at their backgrounds, they're all comms people. And it's like, I'm not saying comms is not useful, but to say that you can then do some pretty sophisticated psychology stuff, for me, it's
what
like,
are you saying, Simon?
That's I hope you think we're useful, Simon.
Destroyed.
Yeah, but you know, there are people out there who can say they can do really sort of behavioral intervention stuff, and you're like, no, you can't. You can understand stuff from a kind of a particular point of view, but the non-conscious kind of world, it takes a fairly sophisticated skill set to kind of to get to grips with. So you need to, I'm saying that it's about augmenting. It's not about one's better than the other. To Lara's point, it's about they all need to be lined up together. You know, you need the insight, you need some of the sort of conscious, non-conscious stuff. You need to think about, what does that mean? What are my theories and hypotheses? Are they tested? And then you go out with the kind of the operationalizing of it all. And I just think organizers are still getting it wrong. They're going straight to the end point before they even think, oh, we know our customers. I mean, if you ask the sales team, what will they tell you? Leave us alone. We know our customers. And so there are lots of internal politics that are, you know, I understand they don't allow you to go down into that insight route to start with.
I think we're pushing through here to some of the practicalities of actually working in this way and having this mindset and actually making it happen within organisations. And I'm quite keen that for the people that have joined us this morning, we do spend some time on the practicalities and how can this human-led approach actually take place in businesses and organisations. And Lara, I wonder, would you mind going first and sort of telling us a little bit about your experience and any thoughts on how people can actually make this happen?
Sure. So I think I've probably mentioned it, but to summarize it, it would be getting the boardroom buy-in to the customer-centric approach, because effectively what you're talking to is potentially target operating model changes or investment level changes. You know, Simon mentioned you might want to take some of your advertising spend in the short term and invest it in data and insight and slightly different capabilities than the organization has today. On a more practical level, I think it's starting with that strong strategic capability. So have your strategy aligned to your business objectives, making sure that you're building something that's relevant and authentic to your business. So you can only do that if you're really clear of those business objectives and strategies, and your marketing strategies and plans are aligned to that. Blend your data, blend your research and your insight. I've literally just done exactly as Simon said, which is I've taken some of our discretionary spend and reinvested it into insight programs and data capabilities. Know your customers inside out, create the why, and recognize that actually you're not always fighting in industry competition. You're fighting for that individual's time and all the things that are important to that individual. And it's a good blend of brand and demand and creativity and science when it comes to the execution, the content, etc.
Thank you. Simon, you had started touching on some of this. Is there anything else from you on the more practical side of things?
No, I would completely agree with Lara. I'm not going to repeat what Lara said because I completely agree with that. I mean, the other thing, I mean, just on a practical level, it's not, you don't have to throw a tablecloth over everything and suddenly do a step change and, you know, everything needs, why not do some pilot bits to demonstrate worth? Are we talking about getting the board engaged? Well, you know, we do lots of pilots for people and show the worth of it. And then the board, it's easier for the board to go, oh, actually, that was really interesting. Look at that. We've now got triple the ROI on what we would normally spend. So now there's a kind of a case and an argument. So just a quick practical tip. You don't have to throw the kitchen sink at this stuff. You can start small and build up that confidence. And I think that creates kind of trust and usefulness for the team, but also it builds that evidence for you to then go to the board and go, you know what we did here? If we had a little bit more money, we could do even more stuff here.
Great. And Dom, anything from you?
Well, something that you and I talked about the other day, having worked with some very, very large organisations that have found themselves with activist investors on board, trying to split them up to try and get more value out of those organisations. They're trying to split them up for one simple reason. As behemoths and large organisations, they fail miserably time and time again to interact with people at a human level. They look around them, they see, all those investors see the small startups adding enormous amount of value because they can interact with people at a human level and they can treat them as individuals. And now they're looking at these very big organizations that believe in mass marketing. I mean, they have to rely on data and I don't blame them for it. because actually it's a lot like the old world of direct marketing, where you can get a marginal increase by X amount more spend, and they're kind of effective. But those very big organizations are slowly but surely having margin and share eroded by smaller and smaller businesses who can interact with people on an individual level, know how to do it, and are better set up for it. So in some ways, it's a structural issue for me. I agree completely with everything that Simon and Laura have said, but in some ways, having a very big business, it's quite difficult to treat people on a human level. You know, if you're a smaller business, it's a lot easier. There's a lot more personal interaction. There's a lot more personal touch. And if you can't do it with people, you do have to do it with machines, and you do have to do it digitally. And that is less effective, as Simon said, than the human piece, but it's more effective than simply telling everybody the same thing. So structure your business around the individual, however you do it. Make small
point,
business
Don,
units.
sorry to butt in, but I think you had a really good, interesting point there. And I think, Laura, we talked about this when we were on the sort of pre-call. The thing with, if you think about FS, and it's a little bit the same with the sort of pharma sector, you know, in one sector, pharma, we're dealing with science. So we have to be scientific and very pragmatic and practical. And with FS, we think we have to deal with numbers, and everyone's interested in numbers because we deal with numbers all the time, don't we? Well, I've just established the human brain doesn't like numbers, you know, and that sounds really like, oh, horror. I've just put a crucifix up to you guys. You know, it's like, no, they don't. The human brain does not like to deal with numbers. And so what do? I can go on lots of websites in the FS sector and see numbers all over the page. And it's like, I know you have to use your numbers, but you also, there's no emotionality there. There's no call to arms about how does that make me feel? I just see loads of numbers, and that can be quite confusing for customers and clients. I know FS decision-making kind of financial controllers who would actually admit to me in the lift that they're not that skilled in making financial decisions. And you're like, but that's your job. And they're like, yeah, but don't tell anyone. I'm not that confident. And actually, a lot of these FS businesses just get me confused because they just chuck a load of numbers and facts and figures at me and loads of graphs. And I haven't got time to go through these things. So I have to make a real quick skim read and make a judgment. And actually, there's no emotional judgment there. It's just numbers. So it's confusing. Then their numbers are no different to anyone else's numbers. So I think we get fooled that just because we're an FS, we have to deal with numbers. And I recognize that we have to use numbers, but I think we have to bring much more of the emotional side into things, because numbers don't call action. It's how you feel about something, whether you engage with it or walk away from it. Okay, a number just creates that emotional response.
Great, thank you. We're almost heading to time, and I just thought we would maybe spend another 5 minutes quickly looking a bit further ahead. And what do we think is going to happen with this shift to the B2H approach? Dom, you've used the word humanity several times, which I really like. You know, how can we bring humanity into business? So, Dom, maybe I'll come to you first, but looking a bit further ahead, what impact do you think having this approach is going to have?
I think it does affect the structure of businesses. I mean, you know, the funny thing is about, you know, the conversation has partly wobbled around data and you know, over reliance on data. I mean, data has created some of the very biggest businesses on earth ever. And so it's obviously a very successful thing and obviously works in its own way. So let's not knock data. But even the Googles of the world now, you know, the trillion-dollar businesses, they're going to have to start thinking about how they reconstruct and reconfigure themselves around the individual and how they can better set themselves up for the individual. So, you know, to my last point, which was about being of the right size and of the right sort of scale, human scale, I think future is in human scale businesses or human scale offerings that allow people to feel okay interacting and happy to interact with those organizations and buy products from them. Trust, all the things that we've talked about. You know, can I trust a large white organization, as in literally a large white organization in Google, or do I want something more my size, human size? And I think actually that's about it, really. The future is about human scale and human interaction.
Great, thank you, Lara.
Yeah, I totally agree. So I guess as marketers, it's going to be about marketing effectiveness. So if we can, understand more about these individuals, the organisation is wrapped around those individuals in a more effective way. Without fail, that will mean we're going to be more effective with the pound and pence that we spend. I mean, ultimately, marketing are there to find the future profit pools for organisations, and I think if we do that effectively, that will give us sustainable success. So they would be the two things from me.
Right, and Simon?
Yeah, I think Dom's point about the successful businesses, I think underlying that is that all those, the Googles and the Apples of the world, have all significantly invested in psychology. If you look underneath it all, there's a considerable budget there for psychological science that have been invested in all the kind of outputs. So, we have to think about how they've used the sort of knowledge about humans in terms of how they've kind of moved forward. So it's all, data, I completely agree, is useful and completely valid, but it's how you kind of use the data and how you understand what people make of that data that's also useful. So, because then you have to frame it, you have to position it and use it in a wise way. One of the things I thought was interesting is I think businesses are going to have to start thinking about being slightly objective. Okay, so we all value objective opinion, don't we? We don't go to someone who's already biased, who's got something invested in something to kind of get an opinion, because we know they're going to give us a fairly biased. So for me, what I think would be really interesting is if we want to know more about the whys, I think businesses are going to have to kind of start doing that objectively. So it may well be that they're going to have to get allied kind of organizations in to kind of collect and find out the why for them, because that gives them a very neutral kind of take on what's going on out there. And we're finding that when people are doing this just internally for all sorts of political reasons, you're going to get a different take on what that data means and how it's positioned, and that may not kind of create what you need it to create with you. So I think some area of objectivity is something that a lot of organizations are going to need to move into kind of moving forward. I think that'd be quite valuable to them. So it's a kind of, the why for me though is the essential thing. If you don't know the why, you're kind of guessing really.
Yeah. Great, thank you. For those of you that are listening this morning, we are now going to move to questions. So please do feel free to use the chat functionality to put something in there. And we have had some come in already. And one is around the phygital experience, and really people saying, hate the word, but sort of the concept of phygital, and how does that play into this space, and actually really sort of how can we blend those two things, the physical and the digital, to really enable people to connect on a more human level. Would any of you like to sort of share your perspective on that one?
I think it was probably, was it when I was speaking? Because yes, certainly I've heard that before, was what I was alluding to. And it just goes back, I think, to the conversation we had, Katie, which is it's about the need, it's going back to the why. So it's, if it's about ease at a particular moment in time for me, then digital could be a brilliant answer for me. If actually I've got a little bit, or I just need to change an address, being able to do that, and a system goes off and does it with all my policies, and you've made life easy for me, that might be another really good example. But actually, if I've got a question about a claim that I've got or something, that I want to speak to a human, don't try and fob me off with automated messages. And that's why I was speaking earlier about the customer experience, of which digital is a part of that experience, but identifying the pain points and enabling channel choice, I think that's a huge thing for me.
Great. Simon or Dom, anything to add on this one?
I agree with that. Definitely.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, if sorry, Simon, please.
No, go on, carry on.
No. All I was going to say was that when you think about the inquiry process, and when you think about the kind of consumer interaction and experience, yes, probably, I don't know, Simon will know the answers to this. 60, 70, 80% of the questions that we have are mundane and are easily answered and kind of should be answered or can be answered by digital means. rather than human means, so inhuman rather than human means. And I'm fine with that. I'm kind of cool with that, as long as I get the answer I want and, you know, I can move on. But obviously at those moments of extreme pressure and emotion, I want a human. And the interesting thing about Laura's you know, the insurance world and all of those things, I mean, a lot of those services you don't require until something's gone wrong. And at that moment in time, I bloody well do want a human to talk to me. I don't want a bot to talk to me, because I want to know that my roof is going to get fixed, that my loved ones, you know, money's going to get paid out, all of those things. So you either make that experience seamless so that there doesn't have to be an inquiry, but as soon as there is an inquiry, I would like a warm human voice, either on the phone, visually, or even in person.
Yeah, I'd agree. And also the outcomes are interesting from a digital point of view. So if you go for a loan or you open an account or want to get a kind of a, I suppose, some sort of cash injections from a bank, from an FS kind of company, you know, sometimes doing it quick is actually the worst thing that can happen, because then you start wondering how you know, how much research they do about me if they've given me $5,000 in 10 seconds. I'm not sure I trust this organization. Whereas if you delayed it to 15, 20 minutes, they'd be like, well, they've done their due diligence. I kind of trust them a little bit more. So there are lots of things, like nuances you can play with in terms of that frictionless kind of thing. It's on a piece of elastic. You can stretch it a bit. We don't have to do it all really quickly. I mean, think about holidays. You know, when you've had a really bad day at work, what do you do? A lot of people go and have a little search around for potential holidays that they might. I know that's been difficult lately, but they will anticipate about where could I go, where could I be, and they love the search, and they spend an hour, like glass of wine, cup of coffee, looking through all these holiday sites. The worst thing they want to do is land on a page and be told you've got 30 seconds to make a decision. Get on with it now, or we'll make a decision for you. And you're like, whoa! I didn't even want to go to Bermuda. What are you talking about? So, you know, we have to be quite careful. But when they've chosen the holiday they want to go on, then they want it frictionless. They want to pay for it quickly. So there are different moments in terms of that experience that you'd have to think about what are the sort of more human kind of elongated kind of experience and which are ones they want really quickly. So that's quite interesting, I think. And I think I would really urge brands not to kind of, I hate the word omni-channel. It doesn't really exist actually. There's no such thing in psychological terms as omni. You can't be in one place or two places at the same time. You're either looking at your phone or you're in the shop. You don't do both. Okay, so if you're looking at your phone, you're not concentrating on what's going on in the shop. And if you're looking around the shop, you're not looking at your phone. Okay, you cannot multitask. It is impossible psychologically. Okay, so I've just given all the men in the world great kind of excuse here, scientific evidence that you cannot multitask. You just can't do it. So we have to think about how do we layer on this digital, because, you know, if we add 7 layers, it doesn't mean to say they're going to be doing 7 things. What it means, they're going to be spinning between 7 different plates. And so you've made life difficult for them because it's now stressful. So we have to think about this sort of phygital kind of experience about, well, what are we trying to achieve with it? Just by adding more digital doesn't mean to say the experience is going to be any better. So I would agree with what Lara and Dom said. You have to be quite context specific.
Right, we've had one other question, which I think we'll do as sort of a final quick answer question to wrap us up. And this one is, when it comes to customer-centric experience across the entire journey, are there any quick tips for how you can add that customer-centric piece at different points in the journey? Any quick thoughts on that before we wrap up for today?
Well, if you know the whys, if you can find out these 4 groups, you know exactly on the whole customer journey what they need. So a control person, what they need on that kind of whole journey, as opposed to someone who's much more of an individualist. You know exactly what you should be doing at what points, in what medium. So it can be quite specific. For me, that's kind of been quite revelationary.
Great. Lara?
Yeah, same. Get your insight to map the customer journeys. Choose ones with either the biggest pain points or the biggest opportunity. Don't boil the ocean, and just go into one of those journeys and improve that journey based on the research, the insight, and the data. And you know, it can transform your organization, taking one small step at a time.
Great. And Dom, to finish us off for today?
I think the only thing to add to anybody else's is actually, I mean, never mind kind of understanding the why or the kind of the quality of the journey or what the journey is. Those are so important. actually understand when the consumer is happy to be interacted with and in what way. M&S did an enormously successful Christmas campaign a couple of years ago when they digitally led, but very, very human in its form of kind of interaction. And they were super successful because what they did was they focused on actually how the customer wanted to be interacted with and the kind of quality of advice and the type of promotions that they were open to. So some people are very happy to be sold to, some people are very happy to be influenced, some people are very happy to discover things by themselves. To understand the kind of way the person wants to be interacted with along the perfectly described Germany, it's football tonight.
I was going to say you were a bit ahead of yourself. Not till
it's coming home, everybody. It's coming home. Please. I'll shut up. You
okay,
get my
well,
point.
no, that's fine. Well, really, I'll wrap up now and just say thank you very much, everybody, for joining us, and thank you, panelists, for sharing all of your insights this morning. I just will flag that we do have an event coming up in July, which we'll send details out for later this week, which is sort of the next step on some of this, which is around customer centricity. So if you've enjoyed the conversation this morning, that one will hopefully be sort of a bit of a natural next step for you. I really hope you all have a very positive and productive Tuesday, and thank you so much for joining us.